spanned 2 states and claimed the lives of 5 family members. In September, Michael Jones was arrested in Bentley County, Georgia, for the murder of his wife, Casei, and 4 children.
Oh, just a shocking, awful case. He told police that he dumped the children's bodies weeks after killing them in their Central Florida home.
A Florida father, a quiet home, a missing mother of 4. Then a crash on a Georgia highway, and 6 bodies found rotting in the back of a van. His name was Michael Jones Jr. They called him a copycat, but the truth is darker and far more silent. This is the family murder story you've never heard. They lived at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in Summerfield, Florida. A pale yellow house with flaking trim, overgrown grass, and a dented mailbox no one ever bothered to fix. From the outside, it looked like the kind of place where kids left. Bikes in the driveway and parents fought only about bills, normal, ordinary. But behind the front door, a man named Michael Jones Jr. was quietly erasing his family. He wasn't the type of monster who screamed in the streets or wore his violence. Like a badge, he was quiet, dull even. A 38-year-old man with thinning hair and a tired jawline who shuffled through Walmart parking lots and worked odd tech jobs from home. He rarely smiled in photos. His eyes always looked like they were somewhere else, or nowhere at all. But what Michael lacked in charisma, he made up for in control. His wife, Casei Jones, was bright, warm. She had a laugh that made people smile even when they didn't feel like it. She was the kind of mother who posted school crafts and birthday cupcakes on Facebook, whose feed was filled with "blessed to have my babies" captions and smiling selfies with her children. Her love was loud, proud, unapologetic. She had 4 children, all under 10, and each of them looked like her. Bright eyes, brown curls, hopeful faces. There was Cameron, 10, Preston, 8, Mercalli, 5, and Ayana, just 1. Their names alone told stories. A household of laughter and chaos, finger paints and snack time fights. Michael wasn't their biological father, except for the youngest, but he'd been in their lives for years. He signed school forms, tucked them in, played the part of dad, even if he rarely played with them. He wasn't warm, he wasn't involved, but he was there. And sometimes being there is just enough to hide the horror. Neighbors said they were a normal family. No one heard shouting, no sirens ever came. The kids played outside sometimes. Casei posted happy photos online, not every day, but enough to convince herself it was real. But friends noticed small changes. She smiled less in selfies. She stopped returning messages as quickly. Her once colorful captions turned vague. "Pray for my strength." Keeping faith even in dark seasons. It's hard, but God's got me. No one knew what those words were covering. Because in the silence of their home, Michael was unraveling. He was losing jobs, blaming her. He accused her of cheating, of disrespecting him. He started isolating her, first emotionally, then physically. He'd take her phone, control her car keys, monitor who she spoke to. At night, he'd whisper cruel things while the children were asleep. He didn't punch, he didn't slap. He just drained her. Every day, a little more of Casei disappeared. By the summer of 2019, Casei was a shell of herself. Friends begged her to leave. She considered it, even packed a bag once. But Michael had told her that if she left, she'd regret it. She believed him. Still, she held on to her children. They were the reason she kept breathing. She told a cousin once, "He scares me, but I can't leave without a plan. I can't put my babies at risk." That was July, Q2. August, they were all dead. August 10th, 2019. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of thick, humid Florida silence that makes the heat feel heavier. Behind the closed blinds of the yellow house, Michael Jones Jr. was killing his wife. No one heard her scream. Later, he would tell detectives it just happened, that they argued, that she hit him first, that he lost control. But what he described next wasn't a moment of fury. It was cold, methodical, and planned. He hit her hard, repeatedly. He didn't stop when she begged. He didn't stop when she fell. And when she stopped breathing, he just stood there. The children were in the house, his own stepchildren, 10, 8, 5, and his infant daughter, Ayana. They didn't see it, but they felt it. Michael didn't call 911. He didn't run. Instead, he wrapped her body in a blanket, dragged it into the master bedroom closet, and shut the door. Then he made the kids lunch. For nearly 2 weeks, Casei's body sat in that closet. He bought air fresheners, lit candles, blasted the TV. He told the children, "Mom's sleeping, don't go in there." And they listened because they were scared, because something in the air had shifted, because even little kids can sense death, even if they can't name it. Michael lied to friends, to Casei's mother, to everyone who asked. "She's sick. She's sleeping." She took the kids somewhere. He used her phone to send fake texts, posted on her Facebook, wrote messages like taking a break from everything, needed to get away for a bit. Love y'all. But the truth was rotting in the next room. Then something darker happened, something even more monstrous, when the questions got louder, when the smell grew worse, when the children began asking too many questions. Michael murdered them, all 5. He killed his own 22-month-old daughter, Ayana, and the 3 children Casei had before she met him, children who called him dad, children who trusted him, children who believed him when he said everything was okay. He didn't shoot them, he didn't stab them, he beat them one by one. Their bodies were small, fragile. They didn't stand a chance, and after each one he wrapped them in blankets, placed them gently beside each other, like he was tucking them in. Then he cleaned the floors, loaded them into Casei's van, and drove. For 2 weeks, Michael drove across Florida and Georgia with 6 corpses in the back of a minivan. He parked at gas stations, slept in parking lots, ate fast food while the bodies decayed behind him. The smell was unbearable, but he kept driving. He told himself he needed time to think, to plan, to figure out what came next. He didn't seem panicked. He didn't kill himself. He just existed with the dead. Meanwhile, Casei's family was sounding alarms. Her mother, Nikki, knew something was wrong. Texts didn't sound like her daughter. Her phone started going straight to voicemail. The kids hadn't called. No social media, no school, nothing. She filed a missing persons report, showed up at the house. No answer. Neighbors said they hadn't seen the family in weeks. Police tried to locate Michael. He was on the move, cell tower pings, ATM withdrawals. But he was always one step ahead until he wasn't. On September 15, 2019, nearly 5 weeks after the murders, Michael crashed the minivan near Brantley County, Georgia. The wreck was minor. Police arrived. He was calm, but they smelled it. The stench hit hard, sour, chemical, inhuman. Officers opened the back of the van and found 6 decomposing bodies, blankets, maggots, hair, the remnants of a family, and Michael just stood there. The Georgia officers barely had time to process what they were seeing. The odor of death was overwhelming. The back of the van had turned into a mobile crypt. 6 bodies, 5 children, and 1 adult, wrapped in blankets, stacked without ceremony. The decomposition had advanced. It took days to formally identify each victim. Michael Jones Jr. was arrested on the spot, but he didn't run, didn't fight, didn't cry. He looked at the officers with dead eyes and said, "You'll find the rest of them at the house." The Marion County Sheriff's Office in Florida already had a file on Casei, a missing persons alert from her mother. But now they had the final puzzle piece, delivered in horror. Her entire family had been murdered, and their killer had carried their corpses across state lines. They brought Michael back in chains. He sat across from detectives like a man who had already resigned to something, not guilt, but detachment. The lead investigator asked him, "Why did you do it?" Michael paused, then said, "It was building, I just snapped." But the more he talked, the clearer it became. This wasn't a snap. It was a storm that had been planned, brooding, and deliberately unleashed. He described in chilling detail how he'd killed Casei first. They'd argued about money, about him losing another job, about her wanting to leave. He said she slapped him, that she called him a failure, that she was planning to take the kids and run, so he hit her. Over and over, he admitted he left her body in the closet for 2 weeks. He said he used her phone to lie. He said he watched the kids tiptoe around her closed bedroom door and pretended nothing was wrong. Then one night, he said, the pressure got too high. He killed each of them. Cameron, Preston, Mercalli, Ayana. Not in anger, he claimed, but because he couldn't imagine being without them. If she was gone, he said, there was no point. Detectives were stunned. They'd heard confessions before, shaky, ashamed, defensive, but Michael was calm, cold. He described the weight of each body, how long it took, how quiet the house was afterward. He said he watched cartoons for hours, the next morning, and then packed the van. The deputies asked if he'd felt guilt. He shrugged. I thought about it. But what's done is done. The community of Summerfield was ripped apart by the news. Neighbors wept on live television. Casei's family held a vigil on the front lawn. Candles, posters, baby shoes placed gently near the driveway. Her mother, Nikki, barely able to speak, told reporters, "He killed my baby. He killed all of them, and then he drove around like they were garbage." But Michael's trial wouldn't come quickly. The forensics were massive. 6 autopsies, hundreds of evidence photos, house DNA mapping, phone records, digital trail reconstruction. He was charged with second-degree homicide for Casei, then first-degree murder for each child once the full investigation was complete. He entered a plea, not guilty. His public defender began quietly building a case around mental instability, not insanity, but breakdown. But prosecutors saw through it. This wasn't madness, it was method. The trial was never meant to be dramatic. Michael Jones Jr. wasn't a man who inspired protesters or headlines. There were no national news trucks camped outside the courthouse, no Nancy Grace specials, no true crime podcasts dissecting the autopsy reports. But inside the Marion County Courthouse, every seat was filled, because what Michael had done, what he had taken, was too vast to ignore. 6 lives, one by one, all connected by love, all erased by someone who was supposed to protect them. He walked into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, shackled, head bowed, not in shame, but in resignation. His once thinning hair was now buzzed short, his face pale and puffy. He looked like someone who had once been part of a family and now barely remembered what that meant. The prosecution began by reading the names of the victims. Casei Jones, 32 Cameron Bowers, 10 Preston Bowers, 8 Mercalli Jones, 5 Ayana Jones, 22 months. The words hit like punches. The courtroom exhaled. Then the evidence began. Photos of the bodies, of the closet, of the van, of the makeshift graves he'd tried to dig and abandoned, text messages from Casei days before her death, telling a friend, "Something's not right with Mike. I'm scared, he's off." And then silence. Cell data, tracking Michael's bizarre road trip with his victims' bodies, nearly 1,000 miles covered, meandering aimlessly through Florida and Georgia. And finally, his own words, played from the interrogation room, played for the jury, played for her mother. "I couldn't see a life without them, so I made sure there was no life left at all." When it was her turn, Nikki Jones, Casei's mother, walked slowly to the front of the courtroom. She wore a gray sweater, hands trembling as she clutched a piece of paper. Her voice cracked immediately. "You took my baby girl. You took her. Babies. You took the light out of this world and left nothing but shadows." She looked directly at Michael. He didn't meet her eyes. They were happy. Do you even remember that? Cameron used to sing to himself when he drew. Preston danced. In the kitchen, Macaulay wanted to be a firefighter. Ayanna, she was just learning to say mama. She sobbed. The room sobbed. Even the judge had to pause. Michael was sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, 1 for each child. An additional life sentence for Casei's murder was added later. He showed no emotion as the words were read, only nodded once, like he was finally clocking out of a job. As he was led away, Nikki whispered, "I hope you hear their voices every time you close your eyes." The yellow house on SE 144th Place sat empty for months. No one mowed the grass, no one cleaned the toys left behind. A single pink baby shoe remained on the porch, its strap broken, faded by sun and rain. It had once belonged to Ayanna. Neighbors avoided the street. Children walked on the other side of the sidewalk. It was a place that now felt cursed, not because of ghosts, but because of memory. Casei Jones and her children were buried together in one long row of white headstones, surrounded by sunflowers and handmade letters. At the funeral, mourners wore colors. Casei's favorite was teal. Cameron loved red. Macaulay adored purple. They painted the service with life because the death had already taken too much. One pastor said, "We honor their short time on earth, but we also recognize the evil that took them and call it what it was: control, violence, and silence." Because that's what Michael Jones Jr. had used best. Control, violence, silence. Casei's mother, Nikki, didn't fade from the public eye. She turned her grief into advocacy, not on TV, but in courtrooms, schools, and domestic abuse shelters. She gave talks about invisible abuse, about how control doesn't always start with a punch, but with words, isolation, and subtle disappearances. "My daughter wasn't weak. She was tired and scared, and the system made her feel like there was no way out. She fought for legislation in Florida to give women easier access to emergency protective orders, even without direct physical abuse. She advocated for school counselors to be trained in spotting domestic stress through children, not just parents. She created a small non-profit in Casei's name to fund therapy for children who've witnessed family violence. But the world moved on. The news cycle found new stories. Michael sat in prison, just another name on a long list of men who murdered their families and claimed it was a snap. He doesn't give interviews. He doesn't speak of Casei. He has never expressed real remorse. In a psychological evaluation, he said, "I wasn't being heard. I didn't want them to go on without me. It was never about loss. It was about ownership, about one man believing that if he couldn't have them, no one could." The story of Michael Jones Jr. is not just about murder. It's about a lie, too. Many women live inside. The lie that says, "He hasn't hit me, so it must not be abuse." It's about children who smile through fear, about mothers who post happy photos while hiding bruises, physical or emotional, about systems that still wait for blood to believe pain. And it's about a man who drove through 2 states with the corpses of his own family behind him, and still said, "It was the only option I had." But there's something he didn't count on. They were loved, and love leaves traces stronger than silence. It grows in the drawings left behind, the stories told in classrooms, the grief turned into change. Because Casei, Cameron, Preston, Macaulay, and Ayanna were real. They laughed. They danced, they lived, and they should still be here.